The crisp Manhattan air carried a hum of energy that Celeste Morgan had grown to love. For the billionaire tech mogul, the bustling city represented everything she had fought for: opportunity, resilience, and the power to shape her destiny. Dressed casually in dark jeans, a simple cashmere sweater, and designer flats, she blended into the crowd as she stepped onto the glistening pavement of Fifth Avenue. No one would have guessed that the woman strolling by was worth billions, and that anonymity suited her just fine until that day. Celeste was in search of the perfect outfit for an upcoming charity gala, an event where she was not just a guest, but the keynote speaker. The invitation-only gala, attended by the world's wealthiest and most influential, was a reflection of her monumental success. It was a night where every detail mattered, and Celeste wanted to ensure her attire captured the essence of who she was: sophisticated, bold, and unapologetically black. Her assistant had recommended a particular boutique, known for its exclusivity and exquisite pieces. As Celeste pushed open the boutique's glass doors, she was greeted by an expanse of opulence: sleek marble floors, gilded mirrors, and racks of couture garments that whispered of luxury. But what struck her most was the silence. Behind the counter stood two sales associates, both impeccably dressed and chatting in hushed tones. They glanced at Celeste, their eyes flickering over her casual attire, and then quickly returned to their conversation. Celeste approached the nearest rack, running her fingers along a row of intricately designed gowns. She waited, expecting someone to greet her, to offer assistance. But the minutes ticked by, and the silence grew heavier. Finally, Celeste approached the counter. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I'm looking for a gown for a gala. Could someone assist me?" One of the sales associates, a young woman with sharp features and an air of practiced politeness, barely looked up. "We're very busy at the moment," she said, though the store was empty save for one other shopper. "Feel free to browse, and we'll assist you if we can." Celeste's eyes narrowed slightly, but she maintained her composure. "I'd like to see the pieces from the new collection," she requested. The associate hesitated, her gaze flicking over Celeste once more before she responded. "I'm not sure we have anything in your size," she said, her tone tinged with condescension. For a moment, the words hung in the air, their weight settling heavily. Celeste felt a familiar sting, one she hadn't experienced in years. It was the same sting she'd felt as a young girl growing up in Southside Chicago, where teachers underestimated her and classmates mocked her for dreaming big. It was the same sting she'd felt as a young woman navigating the tech industry, where boardrooms often greeted her presence with skepticism rather than respect. But Celeste wasn't that young girl anymore. She was a billionaire, a leader, and a force to be reckoned with. "Thank you for your time," she said coolly, turning on her heel and walking out of the boutique. As she stepped back into the crisp Manhattan air, a plan began to form in her mind. Celeste had built her empire by turning obstacles into opportunities, and this would be no different. The boutique staff had underestimated her, just as so many others had before. But this time, her response wouldn't be quiet resilience or polite indifference. No, this time, Celeste Morgan would remind them, and the world, exactly who she was. Little did they know, the woman they had dismissed so easily would soon become the boutique's most powerful customer, and then its owner. The wheels were already turning, and the revenge Celeste was planning would leave them speechless. As Celeste Morgan walked briskly down Fifth Avenue, her mind buzzed with thoughts. She had built her billion-dollar empire on strategy, precision, and unshakable resolve. In tech, she had faced sexism, racism, and 1,000 microaggressions, each one silently tucked away as fuel for her next success. But what had just happened in that boutique struck a different chord. The casual dismissal, the judgment, the assumptions about who she was based solely on her skin and her understated outfit, ignited something deeper. She reached the corner of the street and paused, taking a deep breath. How many people have they treated like that? She wondered. Pulling out her phone, she sent a quick message to her assistant, Elijah. "Find out who owns Luxette Boutique. Get me a report on their financials." Elijah, who had been her right hand for years, didn't question the request. Within minutes, he responded, "On it, boss. Should have details by tomorrow." Celeste slipped her phone back into her bag and smiled faintly. She had built companies, disrupted entire industries, and transformed her life from the ground up. Now she was going to do something she hadn't done in years: make it personal. Scene 2, behind the boutique's doors. The next morning, Elijah handed her a neatly organized folder over their morning meeting in her penthouse office. Luxette Boutique is independently owned, he began, adjusting his glasses. It's been around for 15 years, but they're not as successful as they appear. High expenses, lagging sales, and they're just barely turning a profit. I also found that they took out a substantial loan last year, which suggests they're cash-strapped. Celeste's eyebrows lifted as she flipped through the report. Interesting. The owner's name is Madeline Sinclair, Elijah continued. She inherited the boutique from her parents. Old money, deep roots. Looks like she's been trying to hold on, but the market's changed, and they're struggling to adapt. Celeste leaned back in her chair, tapping her manicured fingers against the polished desk. Perfect. Are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Elijah smirked. Celeste met his gaze, her expression calm but sharp. I don't just want to buy this boutique, Elijah. I want to transform it, turn it into something better, something inclusive, bold, and successful. He nodded. How should we play it? Quietly, Celeste said. Reach out through intermediaries. Madeline doesn't need to know it's me until the ink is dry. Over the following weeks, the boutique's owners found themselves in discussions with what appeared to be an investment firm interested in acquiring their business. Madeline Sinclair was hesitant at first. Luxette had been in her family for generations, but when the offer came through, it was far too generous to refuse. It's a lifeline, her financial advisor told her. You're drowning in expenses. Let this go. Madeline finally relented. Papers were drawn up, terms were agreed upon, and the deal was finalized. The boutique had been sold to Morgan Group Holdings, a name that meant nothing to her, at least not yet. On a crisp Friday morning, 2 weeks after the deal was finalized, Luxette Boutique buzzed with activity. The staff members were oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred behind the scenes. Madeline was absent that day, but the employees were too preoccupied folding new stock and arranging displays to notice the black SUV pulling up outside. Celeste stepped out of the vehicle, this time dressed with intention. Her tailored white suit shimmered slightly under the sunlight, and her heels clicked with purpose as she strode toward the boutique. She pushed the glass doors open and walked in. Heads turned. The same sales associate who had dismissed her before stood behind the counter. Her face went pale. "Good morning," Celeste said, her voice cool and commanding. The associate stammered, welcome. Can I help you?" Celeste smiled faintly and didn't answer. Instead, she motioned to the rest of the staff, her voice ringing out through the boutique. "Can you all gather here for a moment?" The employees exchanged confused glances, but no one dared to refuse. Soon, they stood in a semicircle before her. Celeste clasped her hands, letting the silence stretch for a moment. Finally, she said, 2 weeks ago, Luxette Boutique was sold. As of today, I am the new owner." The gasps were audible. The sales associate's eyes widened as realization dawned. "My name is Celeste Morgan," she continued, her tone firm but measured. "Some of you may not know me, but you're about to. I visited this boutique recently, and the way I was treated, let's just say, it left me unimpressed. But that experience was a blessing in disguise. It gave me the opportunity to create something new." The associate from that day swallowed hard, avoiding Celeste's gaze. Celeste stepped forward. "Let me make one thing clear. Luxette will no longer be a place where customers are judged by their appearance, race, or background. Moving forward, we will embody excellence, inclusivity, and respect for every person who walks through those doors. And if anyone has a problem with that, you're welcome to leave now." Silence. The staff shifted awkwardly, stunned by her words. Satisfied, Celeste nodded. "Great, now let's get to work." Over the next month, Luxette Boutique underwent a dramatic transformation. Under Celeste's direction, the outdated policies were scrapped, and the store was rebranded into a modern, luxurious haven for all customers, regardless of their status or race. She brought in diverse designers, featuring collections that celebrated global cultures and styles. New hiring practices ensured the staff reflected the diversity of New York itself. Celeste implemented rigorous inclusivity training, making it clear that judgment and prejudice had no place within Luxette's walls. To kick off the relaunch, Celeste planned a grand reopening gala, invitations were sent to New York's elite, fashion editors and influencers, as well as local community leaders and young designers looking for their first break. Luxette was no longer just a boutique, it was becoming a symbol of change. The night of the gala arrived. Cameras flashed as guests in glittering gowns and sharp suits poured into the transformed Luxette boutique. Inside, the space was nearly unrecognizable, modern, inclusive, and alive with energy. Celeste stood near the entrance, graciously welcoming each guest. Among them was Madeleine Sinclair, who entered with a mixture of curiosity and anxiety. When she spotted Celeste, her jaw tightened. "You?" she murmured under her breath. Celeste smiled warmly. "Welcome to Luxette," she said. "I hope you enjoy the changes." Madeleine opened her mouth to respond, but Celeste had already turned to greet the next guest. As the evening unfolded, whispers rippled through the crowd. Fashion journalists marveled at the transformation of the boutique. Influencers raved about the designs on display, which included pieces from up-and-coming designers Celeste had personally mentored. At one point, Celeste took the stage. The crowd hushed as she stood confidently before them. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began. "Luxette is more than a boutique. It's a statement, a reminder that luxury has no color, no background, and no limits. We are here to celebrate fashion, inclusivity, and opportunity for everyone." The applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed as Celeste descended from the stage, her vision for Luxette now a reality. The days following the grand reopening were a whirlwind. Luxette Boutique became the talk of the fashion world. The press praised its transformation, calling it a bold and overdue reimagining of luxury retail. Sales skyrocketed, and customers from all walks of life filled the store daily. As Celeste watched from her office overlooking the boutique floor, she couldn't help but smile. The same space that had once tried to diminish her was now thriving because of her. Elijah entered holding a tablet. "You're all over the news," he said. "People can't get enough of what you've done." Celeste nodded, her gaze still on the bustling store below. "Good. Let them see it. Let them understand what happens when you treat people with dignity and respect." The boutique staff had adjusted to the changes. Even the sales associate who had once dismissed Celeste had remained, though humbled and far more polite. Celeste had chosen not to fire her, instead offering her a chance to grow. Weeks later, Celeste returned to the boutique, dressed in casual jeans and a sweater, just as she had been the first time. She walked through the aisles, noting how welcoming the staff were to every customer. The transformation was complete. As she stood by the door, she overheard one of the new associates talking to a customer. "Our new owner is amazing," the associate said. "She turned this place into something special." Celeste smiled. Quietly, she stepped back out onto the sidewalk, the crisp Manhattan air cool against her skin. She had achieved more than revenge. She had built a legacy of change. The boutique had underestimated her, but now it was a shining example of what happens when you lead with purpose. And Celeste Morgan knew that was the best victory of all. Celeste Morgan stood at the window of her penthouse office, gazing down at the glittering city below. The boutique had been running under her leadership for months now, and the transformation was undeniable. Sales were booming, but more importantly, the boutique had become a symbol of change in an industry notorious for exclusivity and prejudice. Luxette was no longer just a store, it was a movement. But despite the success, Celeste's mind often returned to that first visit, the sting of dismissal, the sting of being underestimated. Elijah walked in, holding his tablet. "They're asking for another interview," he said. "Third one this week. Everyone wants to know more about how you turned Luxette into what it is now." Celeste turned, her face thoughtful. "Let's do it," she said. "But this time, I want to talk about more than just the business." The interview took place at Luxette, now a hub of activity, with customers of all backgrounds mingling among the racks of couture. Celeste sat in the middle of the store, wearing a sleek emerald dress from one of her featured designers. The journalist, a sharp and curious woman, leaned forward, her notebook balanced on her knee. "You've achieved something remarkable here," the journalist began. "Luxette isn't just a boutique anymore, it's a statement. What inspired you to make these changes?" Celeste smiled faintly, her gaze steady. "It wasn't just inspiration, it was experience," she said. "I came here months ago looking for a gown. I walked in as a customer, but I was treated like I didn't belong. That moment wasn't unique to me. It's something many people face, whether they're walking into a store, a boardroom, or any other space where they're judged before they're even given a chance. I had the power to change that here, so I did. The journalist's eyes widened. You're saying that moment directly led to your decision to buy Luxette? Exactly, Celeste replied. I didn't just want better treatment for myself. I wanted to create a space where no one else would feel the way I felt that day. And I wanted to prove that inclusivity isn't a liability, it's an asset. The interview quickly went viral. Celeste's calm yet powerful words struck a chord with audiences worldwide. Social media lit up with praise, and the hashtag #WeBelongHere trended for weeks. People shared their own stories of exclusion and celebrated Luxette as a symbol of hope. One afternoon, Celeste was in the boutique reviewing new designs when she noticed a familiar face at the door, Madeline Sinclair, the former owner. Madeline hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, her posture uncertain. Celeste walked over to greet her. Madeline, she said warmly, welcome back. Madeline managed a small smile. Thank you, she said, glancing around. The store looks incredible, different but incredible. I'm glad you think so, Celeste replied. Would you like a tour? As Celeste guided Madeline through the boutique, she pointed out the changes, the expanded size ranges, the collaborations with diverse designers, the community outreach programs. Madeline listened quietly, her expression unreadable. When they reached the back of the store, Madeline paused. I didn't expect to feel this way, she admitted. When I sold the boutique, I thought I'd feel resentment seeing it change, but I don't. I see what you've done, and it's better. It's what it should have always been. Celeste placed a hand on Madeline's arm. Change isn't always easy, but it's necessary, and it's never too late to be part of it. Madeline nodded, her eyes glistening. Thank you for that, she said softly, and for making this place something to be proud of. Months later, Celeste attended a prestigious gala, the same event she had originally planned to shop for at Luxette. This time, she walked into the grand ballroom wearing a gown designed by one of the boutique's new talents, a young black designer whose work Celeste had championed. The gown shimmered under the crystal chandeliers, a testament to creativity and inclusion. As she moved through the room, guests stopped her, offering compliments and asking about the designer. Celeste used each interaction to highlight the story of Luxette's transformation, ensuring the spotlight was on the people she was empowering rather than herself. Toward the end of the evening, she stood at the edge of the ballroom, gazing out over the crowd. Elijah approached, holding a glass of champagne. You've done it, boss, he said. Luxette's success is the talk of the city. Celeste shook her head. It's not just about Luxette, it's about what it represents. If we can change one boutique, we can change an industry. The next day, Celeste held a meeting with her leadership team. What we've done with Luxette is just the beginning, she said. I want us to take this model to other businesses, boutiques, restaurants, companies that think inclusion is optional. We're going to show them it's not. Her team nodded, energized by her vision. Celeste's plan was ambitious, but she thrived on challenges. She wasn't just rebuilding businesses, she was rebuilding mindsets. 1 year after her first visit to Luxette, Celeste walked into the boutique once again, this time with her niece, Olivia. The young girl's eyes lit up as she explored the store, marveling at the colors and designs. Aunt Celeste, Olivia said, tugging on her hand. This place is so cool. Can we come here every weekend? Celeste laughed. We'll see, sweetheart. As Olivia tried on a dress, Celeste looked around. The boutique was bustling with customers, the staff attentive and kind. It was a far cry from the cold, exclusive space it had once been. In that moment, Celeste felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had turned an experience of rejection into an opportunity for transformation, not just for herself, but for others who deserve better. Luxette wasn't just a boutique anymore. It was a symbol of what could happen when you challenge the status quo, when you refuse to accept that the world couldn't change. Walking to the counter, Celeste greeted the associate with a warm smile. The young woman who had once dismissed her was still there, now transformed by the boutique's values. Can I help you find anything, Ms. Morgan? She asked, her tone respectful. Celeste shook her head. No, thank you. Just here with my niece. As she stepped outside, the Manhattan air cool against her skin, Celeste knew she had done more than prove a point. She had created something lasting, something that would outlive her. And for her, that was the ultimate revenge.